I walked in and heard a laugh that stopped me cold. It came from upstairs, but it had no business being there. Something about it felt too light, too young. I'd driven home early from the lake because my line snapped one too many times, and I got tired of sitting there with nothing to show for it. Figured I'd surprise my wife. Maybe we'd go grab dinner or something. It was only mid-afternoon, so I didn't expect her to be busy. I guess I was right in a way. She was busy. And that laugh, it was sharp. Took me a second to place it. It was her laugh, but brighter, like she'd found a piece of herself she lost years back. Made my stomach sink. Downstairs was quiet. The living room looked the same, her neat little touches on the side table, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. I noticed she'd been drinking iced tea, the kind I hated because it was too sweet. A tall glass sat there, droplets sliding down the sides, still cold. That alone told me I wasn't supposed to be there yet. My shoes on the hardwood felt heavy. It felt wrong, like I'd walked into someone else's house. I stood for a good minute, just listening. Then I heard the laughter again, and a sound I couldn't place at first, something like a rustle, a murmur. I walked through the kitchen, set my keys on the counter. Strange how normal that felt. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misunderstood the laugh, that maybe she'd just been on the phone. But then I caught that tone, that hush, the shift of a mattress. I remember looking at the stove clock, 1:47 p.m. I thought, I'm 2 hours early. 2 damn hours. That was all it took. Or maybe it had been going on for a while. Could have been weeks, months. I felt numb. There wasn't even anger at first. Just a hollow feeling, like I'd walked into a scene that wasn't for me. I went upstairs, step by step, quietly. The hallway was dim, but I saw daylight spilling from our bedroom. The door was halfway open. I heard that laugh again, then something like a gasp. I paused, right by the door, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't want to push it open. But I did. Because some part of me had to see. Had to know. I stepped in. She was there under him, looking right at me. She didn't scream or cover up. She just stared. And he was that guy who came by in the spring to fix our fence. Tall, strong kid, all of 20-something, if that. I remember offering him a beer in our kitchen. Joking with him. Treating him like he was a friend. And now he was there, on top of my wife. My eyes went to her face first. She was flushed, hair all messed up. But she didn't look ashamed. She looked caught, but not sorry. I saw him scramble, try to grab the sheet, but he wasn't quick enough. I didn't say anything. I just stared a second. I think I wanted to see if she'd say something, like, I'm sorry, or, wait. But she stayed silent, except for her breathing. That's when I noticed my old shotgun hanging on the wall. We keep it above the dresser, just as a piece. It was my dad's. Never used it much. I walked over and grabbed it. The kid's eyes went wide. She sat up a bit, her breath catching. But I wasn't going to shoot anyone. I didn't even think about that. I don't know what came over me, but I turned to face that mirror above the dresser, the one she insisted we buy because it matched the bedroom set. In one swing, I drove the butt of the gun right into the glass. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, all falling with this weird tinkling sound that reminded me of ice. For a second, I watched them cascade onto the floor, reflecting shards of light everywhere. I stood there holding the shotgun, my hand shaking. Then I set it on the floor. Didn't even look at her. Didn't look at him. I left the bedroom. Went down the stairs. Everything felt slowed down, like my blood was thick. When I got to the basement, I flipped the main breaker. The lights went out, along with every other sound in the house. Then I walked back up, straight through the darkened living room, and grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter. Walked out the door. Didn't slam it, didn't lock it. I got in my truck and drove away. I didn't have a plan. I drove past the neighbor's dog barking behind a chain-link fence. Drove past the grocery store where we used to shop for Sunday dinners. I just kept driving. Once I hit the highway, I glanced at the fuel gauge. Half a tank. That would get me somewhere. I pulled onto the road leading out of town, heading nowhere in particular. I didn't call anyone. I let the phone ring if it did. I think it was on vibrate in the cup holder. I didn't check. It was like part of me wanted to vanish, to not exist. I couldn't do anger. Couldn't do tears. So I did nothing. Drove for hours. I ended up in a cheap motel off the interstate around 9 p.m. Went to the desk, asked for a room. Paid in cash. The clerk looked bored, gave me a key. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach. There was a flickering lamp by the bed. I sat on the edge of that bed, stared at the wall. The TV remote sat by the phone, but I couldn't turn it on. I just sat there, feeling my heartbeat in my temples. The image of her on that bed with him kept playing in my head on a loop. I tried to shut my eyes, but it was still there. I think around midnight, I stepped outside to get some air. The parking lot was quiet except for a couple of trucks. I lit a cigarette, one I'd left in the glove box for emergencies. I'd mostly quit smoking, but that night I needed it. The sky was big and dark, stars barely visible through the neon motel sign. I felt like I was floating outside my own life. Thought about what to do next. Should I call a lawyer? Should I confront her? Should I call my buddies? But the idea of telling anyone made my stomach churn. I couldn't handle hearing my own voice explain it. After a while, I crawled back in bed and stared at the ceiling until morning. No calls, no texts. Or if there were, I didn't see them. I just listened to my own breathing. Everything was quiet. It was the kind of quiet you get after something big happens, like your mind can't process it yet. I thought about the day we got married, how young we were, the small ceremony in a local church. Then I thought about the day I introduced her to fishing. She hated worms, but she pretended to be all tough about it. She used to laugh with me, a bright laugh, different from the one I'd heard that day. Now I was in some dingy motel, my truck parked outside, my phone turned face down in the dark. It felt like my life had ended in that bedroom, the moment I saw her under him. In the morning I checked out. Didn't even shower. Just brushed my teeth with a cheap travel kit they sold at the front desk. Got back in the truck, started driving. Didn't want to go home. I knew what I'd find, either she'd be gone, or he'd be gone, or they'd both be there waiting for some big showdown. I didn't have it in me. I had this raw ache in my chest, but I still couldn't cry. Ended up at a diner somewhere north, got some coffee and eggs I couldn't taste. The waitress asked if I was okay. I said, yeah. She left it at that. I guess I looked like a wreck. I must have. I stayed on the road the rest of that day, drifting between towns. My phone kept buzzing, but I ignored it. I figured she'd be the one calling, or maybe her friend. I didn't feel like hearing lies or excuses or even an apology. I wanted to vanish. By nightfall, I wound up at another motel, even cheaper than the first. I laid on the bed, stared at my phone for a while until I finally turned it off. A part of me wondered if the dog got fed. We don't have kids, well, back then I believed we didn't. So I only had to worry about the dog. Maybe the neighbors. She was probably feeding him, or he was with them, I guessed. That was the least of my worries. But still, that thought came. Because that's what it's like when you share a life with someone. Even when it's all wrecked, you still wonder about the little stuff. I didn't go home for a full day. I just stayed out, slept in my truck some, walked around random gas stations, ate vending machine snacks. The world felt gray. I kept replaying it, that laugh, that look on her face. Couldn't figure out where I went wrong, or if I ever had a clue this was coming. Maybe I'd seen signs and ignored them. I don't know. I'd always tried to be a decent husband. Went to work, provided, tried to keep the house in shape. We had our fights, sure. But I never saw something like this coming. Late the next night, I pulled onto my street. Didn't see any lights in the house, probably still off. I noticed the neighbor's porch light, and their dog out front. Figured they had my dog too. The driveway felt strange under my tires. I sat there a while, engine running, staring at my own front door. Usually, I'd walk in with groceries or fishing gear. But now, it felt hostile, foreign. The clock on the dash said midnight. I shut off the engine, but I didn't get out right away. Kept thinking about that broken mirror, those shards all over the floor. The image made me tense up. Finally, I forced myself out of the truck. The night air was still. No wind. I went in through the garage, noticing her car was gone. The place was dark. No beep of appliances. Just a stale, heavy silence. I walked up the stairs slow, my boots scraping broken glass at the top. I froze when I saw the bedroom. The sheets were rumpled, the bed half stripped. A bunch of mirror shards were piled up to the side. That's when I realized she must have cleaned up a bit, but not all of it. Maybe she left in a hurry, or maybe she just didn't care to finish. I stood there, flicked the flashlight from my phone around. The mirror frame was empty. A piece of it hung off the edge like a broken tooth. I stepped back out, closed the door. I ended up going down the hall to the spare bedroom. Sat on the bed there in the dark. My heart was pounding again. I knew I wasn't going to sleep. I knew I wasn't going to stay. But I needed to see if there was any note, any explanation. There wasn't. The house felt dead. I walked around a bit, opened drawers in the kitchen. Everything was in place. Her coffee mug was on the counter, half rinsed. No sign of the kid from the fence job, of course not. I just wanted to get out. So I grabbed a jacket, stuffed a few clothes in a duffel bag. I looked at the walls. The pictures of us at the beach or at family gatherings. All that felt like it belonged to someone else. Then I left again. I remember locking the door this time. I guess that was some leftover instinct. Lock up, keep everything safe. Even though the everything didn't matter anymore. I ended up at a friend's place, a guy I used to work with. Slept on his couch that night. Didn't tell him much, just said we had a falling out. He offered me a beer. I took it, drank half, set it down. No appetite for it. Next morning, he went off to work. I told him I'd be out by the time he got back. He said, "Take your time, man." But I couldn't stay. By noon I was gone, driving again, nowhere special. I felt like a ghost. Part of me wondered if I'd even go back at all. A bigger part knew I wouldn't. Not to that house, not to that life. Because once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. It's done. It's over. There's no talking it out, no stepping back to what used to be. But I couldn't run forever. I needed to face it somehow. And I needed to figure out what came next. That's when the next piece of this whole mess showed up. A man with a thick file under his arm, knocking on a door I no longer wanted to open. I didn't know it yet, but that file held the worst shock of all, a birth certificate for a boy named Jake, the kid I thought was mine in every sense but blood. The kid I'd spent years raising, the one I taught to drive, the one I taught to fish. The boy who stood with me at his high school graduation. My wife lied to me about where he came from, how he got into our lives. She said it was an orphan story, that we were saving him. But it was her own kid, with another man. All that was just around the corner. I just didn't know how hard it would hit. And that's saying something, because I already felt flattened by what I'd seen. I kept thinking, what else is there? But sometimes you learn that betrayal has layers. And the deeper you go, the uglier it gets. I found that out soon enough. By then, I thought I'd felt the full punch, but I was dead wrong. The next day, after I'd tried to catch my breath, I decided to head back to the house just to pick up a few more things. That was when the knock came. And everything shifted again. Everything I believed, everything I built, it all blew apart, piece by piece. Just like that mirror. Maybe worse, because glass can be replaced. But the truth can't be undone once it's out. It cuts right through you, leaves you bleeding in ways no one else can see. And that's exactly what happened next. I sat in the living room, half dazed, waiting for the next step. I didn't realize the next step would come so soon. But it did, wrapped in legal papers and a smug expression on the man who brought them. One day, you think you know your story. The next, you find out you've been living a lie. And that lie was about to come undone in the worst possible way. I opened the door because I heard the knock, expecting maybe my wife or the young fool who was with her. Instead, it was an attorney, carrying a stack of documents with neat little tabs. He looked tired, like he'd done this 100 times before. Probably had. And that was the start of a whole different kind of pain. I sat there on the couch, staring at the man who'd come to deliver more damage. He was polite enough, but there was a stiffness to him. Like he just wanted to drop off the papers and go. Maybe he'd handled these situations too many times. Maybe he'd seen the shock on men's faces so often it didn't move him anymore. He introduced himself, gave me his card, said something about representing my wife's interests. I glanced at the card but didn't really take it in. Legal letters, fancy last names. None of it mattered. All I cared about was what he was doing on my doorstep. He set a folder on the coffee table. Inside, I saw some typed documents, official stamps. He said a lot of words: divorce petition, settlement, property division. I heard him, but it felt like he was speaking from the other side of a thick window. My mind was stuck on the fact that she'd sent a lawyer so soon. Just days after I left. Like she couldn't wait to start the process. Or maybe she was anticipating something bigger from me, like a fight. She wasn't gonna get that. I was too numb to fight. Then he slid out a piece of paper with a seal on it. Some certificate. He tapped it with his fingertip. "This is also relevant," he said, voice low. I glanced at it, saw Jake's name. My eyes flicked up. "He's not," the lawyer started, then hesitated. I saw in his expression that he hated this part. "He's not adopted, legally speaking. There's no formal adoption record." I just stared. The attorney sighed. "The father's name on the birth certificate isn't yours." He cleared his throat. "It's this man." He tapped a page. I didn't recognize the name, but I knew who it had to be. The old boyfriend. The one she mentioned in passing years back, the one who'd vanished. The one she claimed she broke up with for good. I remember the blood draining from my face. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. "That's not," I mumbled. Then I stopped. The lawyer shifted, tugged at his tie. "I understand this is difficult. My client wanted you to have clarity, going forward. The divorce might bring up questions about custody or financial responsibility. She wanted everything clear." His words felt rehearsed. He was trying to be gentle, but there's no gentle way to say, "Your son isn't yours, and your wife's known all along." I looked at that birth certificate. Jake's name. The date. The place of birth. He was born while I was away on a job in another state. I remember how she told me she was taking a break, that she needed time to figure out her life. Then she showed back up, said she wanted to start fresh. A few months after that, she told me about a baby in an orphanage. Said she wanted us to adopt him. She put on a real good act: tears, fear that we'd be rejected, hope that we could be a family. And I, like a fool, said yes. I believed her. I signed some documents that I thought were adoption forms, but now I see they must have been something else entirely. Or maybe I just didn't read them carefully enough, trusting her more than I trusted my own instincts. All those years, I taught him how to tie fishing lures, how to change a tire, how to drive stick. 17 years I was his dad. I watched him grow, saw him graduate. I was so proud that day. I stood beside him in pictures, told everyone that he was my boy. He called me dad, asked for my advice about college, girls, life. And now this lawyer was telling me it was all a lie. Or not all of it, but the foundation was rotten. She'd used me to raise someone else's kid, a child she had with the man she was on a break with. A break that apparently included a whole pregnancy. I felt like something inside me ripped open. I couldn't say anything. The lawyer stayed quiet for a moment, then started packing his documents up. "You should seek legal counsel," he said, like he'd said it 1,000 times. I just nodded, or maybe I didn't. I don't recall. He left, and I was alone with that piece of paper. I reached for it, read the lines again, hoping I'd misread. But it was clear as day. My name was nowhere on there. The father's name was someone else. My wife's name was right there. Everything matched. The date lined up perfectly with that so-called break. She timed it all, planned it out. Then she lied to me for nearly 2 decades. I sat there for a long time, maybe hours, staring at that certificate. I felt tears burn my eyes, but they wouldn't fall. I was too angry, too hurt. It was like my mind was on fire, but my body was cold. After a while, I tore the paper in half, then realized I'd probably need it. I taped it back together with Scotch tape from the drawer, my hands shaking. Looked at the tear, running right through his name. It felt symbolic somehow, like I was trying to tear him out of existence. But it didn't change anything. The truth was there, taped and ugly, but it was there. I remember thinking, did Jake know? If he did, he never let on. He always acted like he was my kid, acted like he loved me. Or was that fake too? That thought was like a knife in my chest. I couldn't breathe. Jake was the one bright spot in my life for so long. Even when my wife and I fought, he was my anchor. I'd take him fishing, or we'd go watch a ball game. All that time, she knew the truth. She let me play the fool. I needed air. So I got up, walked outside. The sun was too bright. I squinted, felt the heat on my face. The neighbor's dog barked at me from across the fence. My dog wasn't there. Probably still with them, or maybe with her. I felt a pang about that, but it was drowned out by the bigger pain in my chest. I leaned against my truck and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Then I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Because this was just too much. First I find my wife in bed with that fence guy, then I learn that the son I raised wasn't mine at all. It was like the world was playing a sick joke on me. I went back inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge. Warm, but I drank it anyway. My eyes kept going to that taped-up certificate on the coffee table. I wanted to burn it, but a voice in my head said I should keep it, that I might need proof. Proof of what I didn't know. Maybe proof that my life up to that point wasn't what it seemed. I couldn't stay in that house. Everywhere I looked, I saw memories. The couch where Jake and I watched football. The kitchen island where we joked and teased each other about who did the dishes. The back porch where I taught him how to gut a fish. The hallway pictures of us standing together at his graduation. It was unbearable. So I finished that beer, tossed the can, and walked out. I locked the door again, some habit I couldn't shake. Then I got in my truck and drove off, not caring about the direction. I ended up driving to a local park. Found a bench. Sat there, watching joggers pass by, couples holding hands, kids playing. All these people, living normal lives. Probably had normal problems. Bills, maybe a leaky faucet. Meanwhile, my entire life was a joke. 17 years of fatherhood built on a lie. A marriage that was apparently over long before I saw her under that guy. And now she wanted a divorce. She'd probably get half the house, half the savings, who knows what else. The only thing she wouldn't get was me. I was done. Right then and there, I decided I wasn't staying in that town. Couldn't live with the ghosts. Couldn't handle the pity or the questions or the endless bullshit. That day, I hatched a plan to vanish. To find some corner of the world where I could sit with my anger and betrayal without prying eyes. I wasn't thinking about revenge yet. I was too lost for that. The rage was there, but it was tangled up in heartbreak. Part of me wanted to talk to Jake. Ask him if he knew. Ask him if he even cared about me. But I didn't know how. Not yet. And I sure as hell couldn't talk to my wife. So I just left. Went by the bank first, pulled out some cash. Then I drove. Grabbed a motel for the night again. Slept like a dead man. My phone stayed off. If the world wanted me, it couldn't have me. Not now. That's pretty much how the next couple of weeks went. I roamed around, checked in with an old buddy or two just to let them know I was alive, but I never stayed long. They'd ask how I was doing, and I'd shrug. They didn't push. They knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to spill. Didn't want to see that look on their faces. Didn't want the sympathy. I just wanted to be alone with it. The numbness kept me going. I had a cooler in the back of my truck, filled it with drinks and sandwiches. Stopped at rest stops, roadside overlooks. Thought a few times about just driving off, no destination. But I still had some sense of responsibility. My old job. My boat. The house. I couldn't just toss it all without making decisions. But I wasn't ready to face any of that, not yet. Eventually, I realized I had to talk to a divorce lawyer of my own. Sort out the legal mess. Figure out how to handle the property. I wasn't going to fight for the house, didn't want it. But I needed to protect myself. So I did that. Found a guy recommended by a friend, set up an appointment. That was the first time I spoke out loud about what happened, about how I found her with that young man, about the birth certificate. The lawyer listened, asked some questions. Gave me a grim nod. "It's ugly," he said. "I'll do what I can." That was it. No comfort, no empty words about how it might work out. Just the facts, which was all I needed. But as the days passed, something started boiling in me. A need to do more than just run. Something about that last piece of betrayal, about Jake. I couldn't let that slide. I'd poured years of my life into raising him, under false pretenses. She'd robbed me of the chance to be a real father, or to choose whether I wanted to raise another man's kid. That's what stung the most. If she'd been honest, I might have done it anyway, but at least I would have known. Instead, she lied to both of us. And I kept picturing that scene in the bedroom, her face. No shame, no fear. Like she was so sure of herself, so sure I wouldn't do anything. That thought gnawed at me. A piece of me wanted to show her she was wrong. Still, I didn't know how. So I just went back to drifting, staying away from that house, from the memories. I met with my lawyer once a week, answered his questions, signed some forms. He said she was pressing for a quick divorce, wanting a settlement. Fine by me. I wanted out. But the hurt was there, festering. And I started thinking of ways to make sure she understood exactly what she'd done. Ways to make sure Jake understood too. Because I wasn't going to be the only one living with scars. For a while, I tried to handle it like a rational man. Told myself, just sign the papers, move on, forget about them. But betrayal doesn't always let you walk away clean. It's like a thorn under your skin, reminding you every time you move. I'd be driving down the highway, and something would trigger a memory. That day I taught Jake to parallel park in an empty lot. The time we grilled steaks in the backyard and he was so proud of flipping them without burning them. I'd feel pride, then remember that none of it was real. Or maybe it was real to me, but it was built on a lie. Over time, that anger hardened. It stopped being raw pain and turned into something colder, sharper. And I realized I couldn't just let it slide. I started thinking about what she'd done. Cheating on me with that fence kid was one thing, but lying about Jake for 17 years. That was something else entirely. I thought, she's been cheating me out of a reality I believed in since day one. I wanted her to see what it felt like to be blindsided. I wanted her to know she wasn't as untouchable as she acted. So I started digging. Quietly, patiently. I had time on my hands now. I staked out near our old house a couple of times, just to see if that fence kid was still hanging around. He was. Went in and out like he owned the place. My lawyer said not to do anything stupid. So I didn't. I just watched, took some pictures with my phone. But that wasn't enough. I started following them. I'd see them go to grocery stores, restaurants. I'd snap photos from my truck window, keep my distance. I know it sounds crazy, but I needed something to prove she wasn't just stepping out once. She was living a whole other life. Maybe not a happy life, but a life with him. Then I'd send the pictures to my private email, archive them. I felt dirty doing it, like I was sinking to a low level. But every time I had doubts, I'd remember that birth certificate, that betrayal. And my resolve hardened. I wanted a record of everything. I wanted to be sure I had proof in case she tried to spin some story later. I guess I also wanted to see how far down the rabbit hole this went. Because she'd lied for years. Who's to say she wasn't lying about more? For months, I drifted around, staying at cheap motels, sometimes sleeping in my truck. I'd show up at the lawyer's office when needed. I sold off some of my stuff, tools I didn't need, my fishing gear except for one good rod, some furniture from storage. Anything to lighten my load and gather cash. The only big item I kept was my boat, at least for a while. Then, one day, I looked at it and felt nothing. Fishing had been my passion, but that day on the lake when the line kept snapping felt like a bad omen. I didn't want to go out on the water anymore, not with that weight in my chest. So I sold the boat too. The guy who bought it was excited, said he'd take great care of it. I handed him the title, took the check, and walked away. Didn't look back. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her. It wasn't hard. She had a pattern: work, groceries, dinners, back to the house. The fence guy seemed to be staying there now. They were a real couple, it looked like. I could have confronted them any time, but I stayed in the background. I wanted to gather enough evidence, for what exactly I didn't know. Maybe to confirm that this wasn't a one-time fling. Or maybe I just wanted them to feel eyes on them, even if they didn't know it. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting them. Once, I drove to Jake's high school, parked by the field. I watched him come out with friends. He looked happy. Carefree. Probably no idea that his entire origin story was a lie. Or if he did know, maybe he was just going along with it for her sake. I couldn't tell. My chest hurt so bad I had to leave. I'd taught that kid everything. He was the reason I stayed in that marriage when things got rocky, the reason I tried to hold on. If he truly didn't know, then it was all her doing. But if he knew, that cut even deeper. Time passed. The divorce was still in the works. No final settlement yet. My lawyer said there were issues about the house, about some joint accounts. Meanwhile, I lived a half-life. Ate cheap takeout. Thought about heading west. Arizona was on my mind. I'd been through there once and liked the open desert. I pictured getting a small place, maybe doing some odd jobs just to keep afloat. Some days I felt like pulling the trigger on that plan. Other days I told myself I needed to see this through, needed closure. I spent a lot of time in my truck parked in random spots, thinking about what closure even meant. Then the day came when the judge stamped the divorce. I found out via my lawyer. He handed me the final papers. She got the house, which I didn't want anyway. She got some money. I walked away with my own small chunk, my truck, whatever I'd already stashed. That was that. The end of a marriage that spanned more than 2 decades, signed off in a few pages. I stared at those pages, thinking of all we'd been through, my father's funeral, her mother's illness, Jake's younger years. It was all undone, just like that. I left town soon after. Not right away, but within a few weeks. Packed what little I had into my truck and started driving southwest. Part of me felt free, part of me felt hollow. I didn't say goodbye to her, didn't tell Jake. The lawyer told me she'd tried contacting me once or twice, but I never responded. That was fine by me. I drove for days, sleeping in motels, occasionally in the truck when the weather was good. The landscape changed from green to desert browns and reds. I remember the day I crossed into Arizona. The sun was setting, turning the sky this burnt orange color. I felt a small flicker of relief, or maybe hope. Like I could start over out there, in the wide open spaces. I found a small place to rent near a dusty little town. Simple trailer, a bit run down. But it had what I needed, quiet anonymity. I paid cash for a few months in advance, told the landlord not to expect me to stay long. He shrugged, said that was fine. I settled in. Some nights, I'd sit outside with a bottle of beer and stare at the big open sky. I started sleeping better, though the nightmares came sometimes. I'd see that image of her, see that birth certificate. But out here, the sting felt a bit less. I thought maybe I could let it go. But something kept tugging at me. I knew she'd gotten away with so much. She'd built a life on lies, and now she'd probably do the same with that fence kid. And Jake, he'd been left in the dark, or he'd chosen the dark. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to set things straight. To expose her for who she was. So I started making phone calls, reaching out to a private investigator I'd heard about through an acquaintance back home. I wanted to see if there was more to her story, other affairs, other secrets. Turned out, I didn't need much help. I already had pictures, but the investigator managed to track down a few more details. She'd been meeting that original ex, the one who fathered Jake, for years off and on. Not always the same man as the fence guy now, so that was a whole other angle. She'd apparently reconnected with the ex in various towns. The fence guy was just her latest fling. My stomach churned when I realized she'd been doing this for half our marriage, maybe more. All that time, I'd been blind. I compiled everything: dates, places, photos, receipts. It took me months, but it gave me a grim sense of purpose. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I wanted it all in one place. I didn't want her rewriting history again. And maybe, deep down, I wanted revenge. I wanted her to know that she couldn't just keep me in the dark forever. Then, out of nowhere, about a year after I left, she found me. Must have gotten my address from the divorce records or something. I got a letter in the mailbox. I remember how my heart pounded when I saw her name in the return address. I took it inside, stared at it, wondering if I should toss it. Curiosity got the better of me. I tore it open. Inside was a letter, handwritten. She said she missed me, that she regretted what happened. She wanted to fix things, said time had passed, and we could forgive and move forward. She wrote that line. Everything can be forgiven. My hand shook when I read that, because to me, what she did wasn't something you just forgive. Especially not the lie about Jake. Especially not the cold way she revealed it through a lawyer. But she was trying, acting like nothing was too big to mend. She even put a phone number at the bottom, said, "Call me anytime." It made me furious. She was acting like she could smooth it all over with a few sweet words, like she did when she told me about adopting Jake so many years ago. I set the letter down, stared at my wall, at all those pictures pinned up. They showed her with different men, some older, some younger, different states. She was the common factor, wearing that same manipulative smile. I thought about Jake. Thought about how he deserved to know who she really was. Maybe he had a right to see the truth laid out. That's when I made up my mind. I got a plain shoebox from the closet. Put all the printed photos in there, the ones from my phone, the ones from the investigator. I wrote a short note. This is who you are. No explanation, no threats, nothing else. Then I sealed the box. It felt heavy in my hands, like all the lies and betrayals were in there, physically weighing it down. I shipped it to her. Overnight. Paid extra. I wanted her to open it and see it all at once, no time to prepare. After that, I felt a release, like I'd finally done what I needed to do. I pictured her face when she realized how much I knew, how long I'd been watching. Maybe she'd cry, maybe she'd get angry. I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the weight of it. Then I sent a set of copies to Jake. Found his address through a mutual friend. Just a simple envelope with photos. No letter. No dad talk. He was old enough to see and decide what it meant. Old enough to handle the truth. If he hated me for it, so be it. At least he'd know. After that I waited. Maybe I expected a call, a voicemail, something. But the phone stayed silent. No letter came back. No angry texts. Nothing. Part of me was relieved. Another part was disappointed. I guess I wanted some reaction, some proof that I'd hit home. But there was only silence. The desert nights went on, and I sat outside, staring at the stars, sipping a beer. Wondering what her face looked like when she opened that box. Over time, the anger dulled. I started picking up small construction jobs, things that didn't require me to talk much. I'd drive out, do a day's work, take my pay, go home. Life was simpler without her. Without that house, without those memories. Now and then, I'd think of Jake, wonder how he was dealing with it. I hoped, in a weird way, that he was all right. Part of me still loved him like a son, even if I knew now that he wasn't mine. But I also believed he deserved the truth, even if it tore him apart. At least he wouldn't be living a lie anymore. I remember the day I finally let myself feel a little bit of peace. I was sitting on an old lawn chair outside my trailer, watching the sun go down. A quiet evening. No TV, no radio, just the crickets and my own breath. It hit me that I was actually okay. Maybe not happy, but okay. Alive. That was something. I'd lost my wife, lost the kid I thought was mine, lost my home, lost the boat. But I'd found a strange kind of stillness in this new life. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't chaotic either. Then, a few days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Got your box." That was all. I stared at it, felt a churn in my stomach. Could be her, could be Jake, could be some combination. I wrote back, "Who is this?" No reply. I waited hours, phone in hand, but nothing came. I guess that was part of the game. Or maybe they just wanted me to know they got it. The next day, I tried calling. Went to voicemail. No message, no second text. So I let it be. If that was the only acknowledgement, so be it. I found an odd comfort in Arizona. The wide skies, the emptiness. It matched how I felt inside. I worked enough to pay the rent, kept to myself. Sometimes I'd drive out to a little lake about an hour away, stand on the shore with my rod. I'd cast a few times, more out of habit than passion. I usually let the fish go if I caught anything. Didn't see the point in keeping them. I guess I just wanted to prove I still could. Then I'd pack up and head back to the trailer. Nights were the worst, because my mind would wander back to all that had happened. But I didn't numb it with booze much. A beer or two, then I'd crash. I heard from my lawyer once or twice. He said the divorce was finalized, and she'd moved on. My name was off everything. A part of me wondered if she was living with that fence guy or if she'd moved on to some other man. I tried not to dwell on it. I reminded myself I was free of her lies now, free of the marriage. She tried to reach out with that letter, but I slammed the door with that shoebox. Good riddance. Months passed. Seasons changed. The desert nights got cold. I found a used camper shelf for my truck so I could drive out and sleep under the stars without paying motel fees. Some nights, I'd sit there on the tailgate, just thinking. The betrayal still burned. A man doesn't just forget that easily. But I'd made my move, done what I had to do. Sent her that box of photos, let Jake see them too. The rest was on them. One day, I was in the local hardware store, grabbing supplies for a repair job. I got a call from my buddy back home, the one who let me crash on his couch that first night. He sounded uneasy. Said Jake had been looking for me, asked if I'd talk to him. My buddy didn't know the full story, just that something bad went down. I told him maybe, but not yet. I needed more time. He said he understood. I hung up. I was standing in the plumbing aisle, staring at PVC fittings, my chest tight. Part of me wanted to talk to Jake, hear his voice, see what he knew. Another part of me was terrified he'd blame me or resent me. Still, I couldn't push away the memory of all those years I was the one he called Dad. But I let it go. Didn't call him. Kept my head down, kept working. Another couple of months slipped by. Then, on a random Sunday morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting on the envelope was Jake's. I recognized it from all those times I helped him with school assignments or saw him scribbling notes to friends. My hand shook when I opened it. I read, "Dad, I got the pictures. I don't know why you sent them, or why Mom did what she did. She won't talk about it. She just cries and says you're punishing her. I wanted to hear your side. I'm not mad at you. I just want to understand. If you ever want to talk, here's my number. Jake." I stared at that letter for a long time. He called me Dad. That single word cut through everything. I felt a sting behind my eyes, realized I was crying for the first time in years. The note was brief, kind of sloppy in its handwriting, but it said everything I needed to know. He still saw me as his father, or at least part of him did. He wanted answers. I wiped my eyes, folded the letter, put it in a drawer. I didn't call him right away. I needed to figure out what to say. How do you explain that his mother lied about his birth, that I'd been blindsided, that I was furious, that I still loved him but felt so betrayed I couldn't see straight? That night, I drank a few more beers than usual, trying to dull the edges. The next morning, I felt like hell. But my mind was clearer about one thing: Jake deserved to know the truth. Not just photos, but the real story. He was 17 now, or maybe 18 by then. Old enough to handle it. So I picked up my phone, stared at his number. Dialed. My throat felt tight when it rang. He answered, said, "Hello?" in a voice that was deeper than I remembered. I almost hung up. Instead, I took a shaky breath and said, "It's me." We stayed on the line, quiet for a moment, just breathing. Then he asked, "Why did you leave, Dad?" That did it. My anger, my heartbreak, it all roared up. But I tried to keep it steady. I told him everything, from walking in on his mom with that fence guy to discovering his birth certificate. I tried not to sound like a victim, but I couldn't hide the hurt. He stayed quiet the whole time. When I finished, he exhaled shakily. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know." I believed him. I could hear it in his voice. Then he started crying, soft at first, then harder. I felt tears slip down my own face. We were two men, connected by a lie, both crying over the phone. Eventually, he whispered, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "It's not your fault." We talked for maybe an hour, haltingly, with long pauses. He said his mom kept making excuses, wouldn't really explain. She said something about how she thought it was best for him, that I was a better father figure than his real dad. She never admitted the full truth, just gave half-assed justifications. Jake said he felt torn. He still loved his mom, but he was angry at her for lying to both of us. I understood. I told him I wasn't sure what came next, that I was on my own path now. I said I didn't blame him, though. He was innocent in this. He asked if we could meet. I hesitated. "I'm in Arizona," I said. "I know," he said. "I can save up and come see you, or maybe you can visit." His voice cracked on the last word. I told him I'd think about it, that I needed time. He said okay. We hung up, both of us raw. That conversation haunted me for days. I'd wanted him to know the truth, and now he did. But I didn't know if I was ready to see him face to face. Part of me wanted to hug him, part of me wanted to run. I kept working, spent more nights by the lake. Tried to process it. The desert seemed to understand my turmoil, vast and silent. Then, one evening, I made a decision. I texted Jake. "I'll call you soon. We'll figure something out." He answered right away. "Thank you?" That was it. Simple, but I felt a sliver of relief. Meanwhile, I hadn't heard a peep from her. That was fine. My revenge was delivered, as far as I was concerned. She probably hated me for showing Jake the pictures, for blowing up her illusions. Let her hate me. She earned this. I was done protecting her image. All my life, I'd looked out for her feelings. No more. She didn't look out for mine when she lied about Jake, or when she brought that kid into our bed. I still felt sick recalling that scene. I guess that was the turning point. After I knew Jake had my side of the story, I felt some of the weight lift. I still carried the hurt, but it wasn't as sharp. I realized I might have a future, maybe not the one I'd planned, but something. Maybe Jake and I could salvage a relationship. Maybe I'd keep living out here, find a more permanent place. The nights were still lonely, but I wasn't drowning in them anymore. Around that time, I got a call from a local contractor. He had a bigger job, building a small set of cabins near a tourist area. It would mean steady work for a while. I said yes. Threw myself into it. Let the physical labor fill my days, let the dryness of the desert fill my nights. Slowly, I felt more like myself, or some version of myself I could live with. It's been a couple of years since all that happened. I'm still in Arizona, still living quiet. I ended up renting a slightly better place with a small yard. Didn't need much, just enough for a bed and some tools. No TV in the living room. Don't want it. Don't need the noise. I keep a radio for weather updates and music sometimes, but mostly I sit in silence when I'm home. People ask why I don't have a TV, and I say, never got around to it. The truth is, I prefer the hush. Too many memories come flooding back when there's chatter in the background. This way, I can hear my own thoughts. If they get too loud, I'll take a drive. I still don't fish much. Once in a while, I'll drive out to that lake and toss a line, but it's different now. There's no comfort in it like before. Maybe it'll come back someday, maybe not. Same with drinking. I keep it moderate. A beer or two, rarely more. Don't want to dull my mind too much. I've been down that road, and it doesn't solve anything. People around here don't ask many questions. They know me as a guy who does honest work, pays on time, doesn't cause trouble. That's enough. I like it that way. I've changed phone numbers a couple times, but Jake always has the new one. He'll text me every now and then, little updates about his life. He's going to a local college near home, working part-time at a hardware store. He's living with some friends. He doesn't see his mom much. Says he can't forgive her for lying. That tore me up a bit. I don't want him hating her forever, it'll eat him alive. But I'm in no position to tell him how to feel. I just listen. Once, he drove out to see me. Showed up in a beat-up sedan. I recognized him right away, even though he was taller, broader. He'd grown into a man. We just stood there, staring at each other for a second. Then I hugged him. It was awkward but real. We spent a few days together, me taking him around the area, showing him the dusty roads and the best spots to watch the sunset. We didn't talk much about the past. We just existed together. One evening, he asked if I'd ever forgive Mom. I shrugged. Told him, I can't see how. He nodded like he got it. Then we changed the subject. When he left, we shook hands, then hugged again. It was a quiet goodbye. He's called a few times since, usually just to check in. I appreciate it, even if we never say much. He ends each call with, "Bye, Dad." That single word still gets me every time. As for her, she tried contacting me once more, about 6 months after that shoebox. Wrote a letter. Said she wished I'd let her explain, that she'd only done what she did because she was scared of losing me. She said we all make mistakes, that love can forgive. I tore it up and tossed it. She had all the years we were married to tell me the truth about Jake, and she chose not to. Then she betrayed me again with that fence kid. I've got no space in my life for that. I'm not a saint, I'm not out for redemption. I'm just out to survive. And I can't survive with her in my ear, spinning stories. So that's that. She's just a ghost from my old life. Every once in a while, I wonder if my revenge was too cruel, sending those pictures to Jake, making him see his mother that way. But then I remember how she fed me lies for 17 years. How she let me believe I was adopting a child from an orphanage, when really she was covering up her own pregnancy with another man. No, I don't think I was too cruel. Maybe it wasn't pretty, but it was exact. She showed no mercy when she destroyed my sense of fatherhood, so I showed none exposing her pattern of betrayal. It's not something I brag about. But I can live with it. There's a difference. Sometimes I catch my reflection in a window, see the lines on my face, the gray in my hair. I'm over 50 now. Not that I ever thought I'd have a perfect life, but I never expected it to crash this hard. I figure we all have wounds. Mine are just deeper than most. I don't plan to remarry, don't plan to get serious with anyone. I wouldn't even know how to trust again. But that's all right. I do my work, I take my drives, sometimes I fish. I keep breathing. That's more than enough for me. I've learned that real betrayal doesn't come with fireworks. It sneaks in, slow and quiet, until you realize everything you believed was built on sand. Then it crumbles, and you're left on your knees, holding nothing. The only way up is to stand on your own. That's what I did. I walked away. I took what little dignity I had left, and I started over. I won't pretend it was graceful. It wasn't. But it was necessary. Jake and I still talk. Not every day, but enough. He's a good kid. He's not perfect, but he's a good man in the making. We never say it outright, but I think we both know that, biology or not, we share a bond. Maybe one day we'll fish together again. Maybe we'll fix up an old car. There's time. I'm not in a rush. We got years ahead, if fate allows. That's the one piece of light I hold on to, that maybe something decent can come out of all this. As for me, I'm not looking for forgiveness. From anyone, including myself. I was blind, sure, but I also let myself be blind. I ignored signs I trusted too easily. And in the end, I dealt with it the only way I knew how. I shattered a mirror with a shotgun, cut the power, and left. Then I spent a year gathering evidence, delivered my revenge in a shoebox. Some might call it petty. But I call it precise. And that's how I live now, precise and distant. It's the only way I can breathe. A few days ago, I woke up early, drove out to the lake again. Watched the sunrise turn the water pink and gold. Didn't cast a line. I just stood there, feeling the chill in the air, listening to the hush before daybreak. For a moment I let my mind wander. Saw the old me, the one who used to wake up early with a thermos of coffee, excited to fish. The one who thought he had a wife who loved him, a son who was his own. The one who would crack jokes with some young fence builder he trusted. That man's gone. But the quiet man standing there is still alive, still here. I got back in my truck, started the engine, and drove off without looking back at the water. Maybe I'll fish again someday. Maybe I won't. Either way, I know one thing for sure, I survived. And I'll keep surviving. In the end, that's what matters. I didn't get closure in the pretty, storybook sense. But life isn't a fairy tale. It's messy, and sometimes you gotta walk away. Sometimes you gotta leave everything behind, sell your boat, burn your old illusions, and live with the aftermath. That's what I did. And here I am, in Arizona, breathing desert air, living a small life. But it's mine, no more lies. And that's enough. I haven't forgiven her. I can't. And I haven't fully forgiven myself for not seeing it sooner. But each day, I wake up, and the weight is a little lighter. Jake and I will figure out what our relationship looks like. Or we won't. Either way, the truth is out. The mirror's shattered, and I'm living in the shards. That's the last thing I can say about it. It's not a pretty ending, but it's honest. And for me, that's enough.